Musashi. The rule that destroys procrastination and exposes weak minds. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because thinks too much, and that is the quietest form of failure there is. Intelligent men are not losing their lives due to a lack of ability. They are losing because they turned thought into a hiding place. While you analyze, while you wait for clarity, while you get ready a little more, others are taking action. Others are moving forward. Others are winning. Miyamoto Musashi would have despised that, because he understood something that modern man refuses to accept. Those who overthink have already lost their initiative. And today, you're going to face the rule that separates men who act, of men who spend their entire lives just understanding. Most people believe that procrastination is an emotional problem. Lack of motivation, lack of discipline, lack of energy. That's a lie. Procrastination is strategic failure. It is the moment when the mind takes control and the body goes into standby mode. Musashi lived in a world where hesitation cost lives. We live in a world where hesitation costs the future. The difference is that today, the punishment is not immediate. It comes in the form of regret, frustration, and silent mediocrity. Musashi didn't train to feel ready. He was training for to act even without certainty. And that's exactly what you missed. Topic 1. The invisible enemy. When overthinking becomes weakness. There is a silent mistake that destroys more futures than a lack of talent, money, or opportunities. A mistake that doesn't seem dangerous at first glance because it disguises itself as intelligence, reflection, and prudence. That mistake is overthinking. Overthinking is not a trait of profound people. It is a habit of minds without control. The man who overthinks believes he is being responsible. He tells himself he is analyzing, preparing, waiting for the right moment. But in practice, he is only postponing the confrontation with reality. Thinking when it doesn't lead to action is not a virtue. It is a postponement disguised as wisdom. Musashi would never have had the patience for that. In the world he lived in, there was no room for excessive contemplation. A decision made too late was not only inefficient, it was fatal. The mind needed to serve the movement, not dominate it. Thought was a tool, not a refuge. The problem with modern man is that he has turned his mind into a hiding place. He thinks to avoid acting. He analyzes to avoid exposing himself. He plans to avoid public failure. Each additional thought seems like security, but in reality it is corroding his ability to decide. The brain learns quickly. If you train it to hesitate, it will become an expert in hesitation. This is the cycle of intelligent mediocrity. First, you postpone a small decision. Then you postpone another. Over time, your body learns to expect orders that never come. The mind takes absolute control, and instinct is silenced. The result is a man who understands everything but executes nothing. Musashi understood that mental speed surpasses intellectual complexity. It wasn't the one with the most elaborate plan who won, but the one who took the initiative at the right moment. He knew that, in any confrontation, whoever acts first sets the pace, and whoever controls the pace controls the outcome. Overthinking destroys rhythm. It creates internal delay. While you organize your ideas, the world moves on. While you seek absolute clarity, opportunities close. While you wait to feel confident, others have already made mistakes, adjusted, and moved forward. There is an uncomfortable truth that few accept. Trust doesn't precede action. It's born after it. Musashi didn't wait to feel ready. He would move forward and allow clarity to emerge in the confrontation. His mind was trained to follow the action, not to block it. Overthinking creates a false sense of control. People believe that if they think enough, they will avoid mistakes. But Musashi knew that mistakes are inevitable. What decides fate is not avoiding them, but act quickly enough to correct them. Those who overthink make fewer mistakes in the short term, but lose everything in the long term. Another devastating effect of overthinking is the erosion of courage. Each imagined negative scenario consumes emotional energy. The mind creates battles that never happened, and the body pays the price as if they were real. The man arrives exhausted at the fight even before it begins. Musashi trained in the opposite way. He reduced internal noise, he cut out the superfluous, he eliminated useless thoughts. His mind was not a place of debate, it was a command center, a clear order, a decisive movement. Overthinking doesn't make you more prepared, it makes you slower. And slowness in any arena, be it war, business, or life, is synonymous with vulnerability. The world doesn't punish those who make mistakes trying. It punishes those who never try. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, the conclusion is simple, albeit harsh. The problem isn't your ability, it's your inability to act without guarantees. As long as you don't train your mind to serve action, you will remain trapped in a cycle of understanding without achievement. Musashi would never confuse intelligence with courage. For him, there was only one true metric: those who act, live. Those who hesitate, disappear. Musashi left no motivation, he left rule. And the rule is called Hei. Hei-ho is not a sword technique. It is not posture nor style. It is the invisible architecture that underpins all effective decisions. Hei-ho is the science of act at the right time, even when the mind craves more data, more comfort, more certainty. Most people believe that the greatest enemy is fear. Musashi knew that the true enemy is hesitation. Fear may exist. Doubt may arise. What cannot happen is allowing these emotions to take control. Hei-ho teaches that whoever waits for the perfect moment has already lost. The perfect moment doesn't exist. There is only the available moment, and the man who acts within it creates an advantage before the other realizes the game. On the battlefield, Musashi observed something essential. The opponent who overthinks loses control of time. He reacts, he responds, he never imposes, and whoever lives reacting is always one step behind. In modern life, the battlefield has shifted, but the rule remains. Meetings, financial decisions, personal projects, social positioning. In all these scenarios, whoever acts first establishes the narrative. Whoever hesitates accepts the narrative of others. Hei-ho doesn't seek emotional comfort, he seeks dominance, and dominance demands decisive decisions before the mind sabotage. That's what separates ordinary men from strategists. Musashi understood that the human brain hates uncertainty. It seeks security, approval, and predictability. But the real world rewards the opposite: initiative, boldness, and tolerance for risk. Hei-ho is the discipline that forces action even when the brain protests. Therefore, procrastination is incompatible with Hei-ho. To procrastinate is to surrender control of time to fear. It is to allow doubt to decide for you. It is to abdicate inner control. The rule is brutal, but simple. Imperfect action now is superior to perfect planning later. Musashi applied this repeatedly. He confronted the situation knowing that adjustments would be made to the movement. He didn't freeze waiting for clarity. He created clarity through the clash with reality. Modern man does the opposite. He seeks courses, methods, external validation. He wants guarantees before acting. Musashi saw this as a strategic weakness. The true strategist creates pressure, not comfort. Hei-ho also teaches something that few accept. Whoever controls the pace controls the outcome. By acting first, you force the other person to respond. You take away their freedom of full choice. They go into reactive mode, and reactive behavior always loses efficiency. This rule applies to everything. Difficult conversations, career decisions, leadership, positioning. The man who acts defines the terrain. What you expect adapts to the terrain imposed. Musashi never confused patience with passivity. He knew how to wait, but never hesitate. Waiting was strategic. Hesitation was emotional. Hei-ho eliminates emotion from command. When you procrastinate, it's not because you don't know what to do. It's because you're negotiating with yourself. You're seeking psychological comfort. Hei-ho cuts off that negotiation. It replaces internal dialogue with internal order. Decide, execute, adjust. That's the cycle. Musashi didn't win because he was the strongest. He won because his opponent was already behind before the first blow. The fight was decided in the mind, long before the steel moved. While you analyze, the world decides for you. While you wait, others move forward. Heiho doesn't ask if you feel ready. He asks if you are willing to bear the cost of action. And here is the final truth about this topic. Life doesn't reward those who understand Heiho. It rewards those who apply it. Most people believe that great victories are decided in the heat of the moment. Musashi knew this is a comfortable illusion. Real battles are won before the confrontation began. The duel against Sasaki Kojiro was not just a legendary fight between two swordsmen. It was a surgical demonstration of applied psychological warfare. Kojiro was everything Musashi despised and respected at the same time. A perfect technician, a man overconfident in his own ability, a warrior who believed that speed and precision were enough to win any confrontation. His technique, the famous swallow's cut, was deadly, fast, lethal. Kojiro trusted in it as if he were invincible, and it was precisely this confidence that Musashi exploited. Musashi didn't go into that duel thinking about how to physically defeat Kojiro. He went in thinking about how to break the opponent's mental rhythm, because whoever loses the rhythm loses control, and whoever loses control loses the fight. The first weapon Musashi used was not a sword. It was the time. By deliberately delaying, he turned the weight into psychological torture. As Kojiro lay exposed to the sun, the anticipation and the public humiliation, his mind drifted away from the ideal combat state. Anger grew, impatience accumulated, focus fragmented. Every minute of delay was an invisible blow. The average person would see this as disrespect. Musashi saw it as strategy. He understood that emotions are fuel, and burning the wrong fuel weakens the engine. Kojiro arrived at the duel emotionally charged. Musashi arrived cold. The second weapon was the symbol. The wooden sword. It wasn't childish improvisation, it was calculated provocation. By appearing with a seemingly inferior weapon, Musashi directly attacked his opponent's ego. He wasn't just saying, "I will defeat you." He was saying, "I don't even need my best weapon for that." This detail is crucial. The human mind reacts violently when it feels disrespected. Kojiro was no longer fighting to win. He was fighting to recover honor. And when someone struggles to prove something, they've already lost clarity. Musashi had studied Kojiro. He knew the reach of the Nodachi. He knew the attack pattern. He knew that Kojiro relied on aggressive initiative. When carving a wooden sword longer that with his opponent's blade, he neutralized the opponent's greatest technical advantage even before the first move. When the duel began, everything was already decided. Kojiro attacked exactly as Musashi had predicted. Fast, furious, predictable. Musashi responded with a single decisive blow. No exchange, no spectacle, no mistake. The lesson here isn't about swords. It's about strategic mental preparation. Musashi didn't win because he was stronger. He won because Kojiro was already mentally defeated when he set foot on the island. The physical fight was merely the final confirmation. Now, consider how this translates to your life. How often do you enter important decisions emotionally charged? How often do you act to prove something, regain self-esteem, or meet external expectations? Every time you do this, you are fighting on someone else's turf. Musashi never accepted the imposed field. He created his own. He controlled time, context, emotion, and perception. He did not react, impose. Most people lose before they even act. They arrive emotionally exhausted, irritated, anxious, distracted. Musashi arrived empty, clear, prepared. Victory wasn't in the blow, it was in the invisible architecture of decision-making. If you want to stop procrastinating, you need to learn this lesson. Action without mental control is merely impulse, but action with psychological mastery is victory anticipated. Planning is not overthinking. Planning is remove the chaos before the movement. Kojiro died in that duel, but the truth is that millions of men repeat his mistake every day. They rely too much on technique. They ignore the mind. They underestimate time. They enter the game already behind schedule. Musashi didn't play to participate. He played to decide. If you believe you procrastinate because you're lazy, you're looking at the wrong symptom. Procrastination doesn't originate in the body. It originates in the mind. More specifically, It originates from fear, but not the obvious fear, not the fear that paralyzes in the face of real danger. Modern fear is more sophisticated. It disguises itself as rationality, planning, and prudence. It presents itself as, "It's not the right time yet. I need to understand better. I'll wait a little longer." Musashi knew this enemy, and he despised him. For him, fear was not eliminated with emotional courage, but with radical acceptance. He trained his mind to accept death daily, not because he was obsessed with dying, but because he understood something essential. Whoever accepts the worst-case scenario loses the power to be controlled by it. Modern man does the opposite. He avoids discomfort. He avoids judgment. He avoids public failure. And in doing so, he surrenders control of his own life to fear. Procrastination is merely the socially acceptable name for this escape. Observe your own behavior. You postpone important tasks not because they are difficult, but because they expose you to risk. Risk of making mistakes, risk of being criticized, risk of realizing that perhaps you are not as good as you think. The ego protects itself. Action is delayed. Musashi never protected his ego. He protected the clarity. He understood that fear is a biological mechanism designed to keep the body safe. But the strategic mind cannot be governed by this mechanism. If it were, no progress would exist. No real victory would happen. Procrastination grows when you start negotiating with fear. Not today. I'll do it later. When I feel more confident. Each negotiation strengthens the habit of avoidance, and the habit becomes part of your identity. In a short time, you're not someone who procrastinates, you're someone who sees himself as a procrastinator, and that's lethal. Musashi cut this cycle off at the root. He didn't ask if he was comfortable, he asked if the action was necessary. If it was, he acted. Emotion came later, reflection came later, adjustments came later. That's the difference between men who move forward and men who explain themselves. Modern fear also manifests itself as perfectionism, the pursuit of doing everything right before even starting. Musashi saw perfectionism as disguised vanity. Those who seek perfection avoid mistakes. Those who avoid mistakes avoid learning. And those who avoid learning never master anything. Combat taught Musashi that making a mistake quickly is better than hesitating slowly. A corrected mistake teaches more than 100 plans never executed. A strong mind accepts the friction of reality. A weak mind seeks theoretical security. Procrastination is when fear convinces the mind to justify inaction, and every justification seems clever, but the result is always the same: stagnation. Musashi leaves us with a simple and brutal rule. If you know what needs to be done and you don't do it, the problem isn't a lack of information, it's a lack of internal leadership. Fear doesn't disappear, it is overcome. And there's only one way to overcome it: act despite it. Not after it's gone, because it doesn't go away. It falls silent when it realizes it no longer has authority. If you want to end procrastination, you need to stop trying to feel ready. You need to act while there's still discomfort. That's the real training, that's the modern battlefield. Musashi won because he never allowed fear to decide for him. You will continue to postpone it as long as you allow it. Musashi reached a point in his life where he understood something that most people never accept. It is not possible to master oneself while living surrounded by distractions. It was from this understanding that Dokodo was born, the path of solitude. Not as physical isolation, but as absolute mental independence. Dokodo was not written to inspire, it was written to eliminate weaknesses. Musashi observed that every man loses energy on 3 fronts: distraction, comfort, and attachment. These 3 things seem harmless, but together they build an invisible prison. A prison where man is never truly in danger, but is also never truly strong. Distraction is the first blade. It fragments attention. Modern man wakes up already reacting. Notifications, messages, constant stimuli. His mind never enters command mode. It lives in response mode. And whoever lives responding never leads their own life. Musashi rejected any action without direct utility. He said, "Do nothing that has no value." In the modern world, this is a frontal attack on social media, on empty entertainment, on the excessive consumption of information. Every minute given over to noise is a minute stolen from your mastery. The problem isn't resting. The problem is living distracted. A distracted man doesn't notice opportunities, doesn't feel time passing, and doesn't build momentum. He spends his days busy, but doesn't move forward. The second blade is comfort. Musashi understood that constant comfort creates fragility. The body and mind adapt to what they receive. If they receive ease, they become fragile. If they receive challenge, they become resilient. Modern man flees from discomfort as if it were the enemy. Musashi sought it as training. He knew that each small discomfort voluntarily accepted strengthened his inner strength. Cold baths, hard training, austere routine, all this was not punishment, it was forging. Excessive comfort creates dependency. Dependency creates fear of loss, and the fear of loss paralyzes decisions. A comfortable man doesn't take risks. A man who doesn't take risks doesn't grow. Dokodo teaches that freedom is born when you reduce your needs. The third blade is attachment. Attachment to people, opinions, status, the past. Musashi understood that everything you can't let go of becomes a chain, and chains don't go well with dominance. He taught not to grieve over separation, not out of emotional coldness but out of clarity. Everything is transient. Those who cling too tightly become predictable, manipulable, and weak. Detachment doesn't eliminate feelings, it eliminates dependence. In the modern world, this manifests as a need for validation. Likes, approval, recognition. When your identity depends on this, you lose autonomy. Your decisions become filtered through the fear of judgment. Dokodo cuts this off at the root. It teaches one to act according to principles, not applause. To walk alone if necessary. To stand by one's choices, even without external support. Cutting out distractions, comfort, and attachment isn't about becoming a monk. It's about becoming uncontrollable. A man who needs little cannot be blackmailed by the world. A man who endures discomfort does not shy away from challenges. A man who controls his attention controls his life. Musashi was not seeking peace. He was seeking clarity, and clarity requires inner silence. Dokodo doesn't ask you to abandon the world. It demands that you stop being sucked into it. As long as you don't cut off the excess, your mind will remain fragmented. And a fragmented mind masters nothing. Most modern men live waiting to feel something in order to act. Motivation, inspiration, energy. Musashi saw this as a fundamental mistake. For him, acting based on emotion was a strategic weakness. Motivation is volatile. It depends on mood, environment, and circumstances. Discipline is not. Discipline is internal command. It's the ability to execute even when the mind protests. Musashi didn't train when he was feeling enthusiastic. He trained because it was the path. And the path doesn't compromise. That's the fundamental difference between men who build and men who only begin. Discipline is not infinite willpower. It is habit of internal obedience. You give an order and you obey. Simple. The more you obey yourself, the stronger that muscle becomes. The more you compromise, the weaker it gets. A man who relies on motivation is always at the mercy of his own emotional state. He starts projects enthusiastically and abandons them when discomfort arises. He confuses initial enthusiasm with real commitment. Musashi understood that discomfort is a necessary part of progress, not something to be eliminated, but something to be overcome. Those who give up in the face of discomfort never discover what they are capable of. Discipline creates identity. Every action taken reinforces the internal image of someone trustworthy to oneself. Every broken promise weakens that image. Over time, the disciplined man trusts himself. The undisciplined man doubts everything. This confidence doesn't come from words. It comes from history, from accumulated evidence, from repeated actions. Musashi built his mind the same way he built his technique, relentless repetition of the basics. In the modern world, people look for shortcuts, hacks, miraculous methods. Musashi would despise that. He taught that excellence is born from the conscious repetition of what is essential. Nothing glamorous, nothing fast, nothing comfortable. Discipline also eliminates procrastination because it removes the choice. When something is part of the routine, it's not debated, it's done. The mind doesn't engage in debate, the body moves. The weak man asks, "Do I feel like it?" The disciplined man asks, "Is this what needs to be done?" This difference may seem small, but it decides entire destinies. Musashi believed that true freedom is born from self-discipline. When you control your impulses, your time and your attention, the world loses its power over you. You stop reacting. You start leading. Motivation ebbs and flows. Discipline remains, and everything that endures wins in the long run. If you want to stop procrastinating, stop waiting for motivation. Start creating a routine. Start small, but start every day. Internal control is built on silent repetition, not on grand, dramatic decisions. Musashi didn't win because he was special. He won because he didn't negotiate with himself. The training was done. The decision was made. The path was followed. Discipline doesn't make you feel better immediately. It inevitably makes you better. The mistake almost every modern man makes is trying to overcome procrastination with willpower alone. This has never worked and never will. Musashi understood something that most people ignore. The mind needs structure, not excitement. That's exactly what the Book of Five Rings offers. Not loose philosophy, but a complete action system. Musashi didn't write the book to inspire warriors. He wrote it to forging strategists. Each ring represents a dimension of the inner self. When one of them fails, procrastination appears. When they all work together, action becomes inevitable. The ring of earth is the foundation. Earth represents routine, fundamental principles, and the repetition of the basics. Musashi said that no one achieves mastery by skipping steps. In the modern world, most people want quick results, advanced techniques, and shortcuts. They ignore the essentials. The result is fragility. Procrastination arises when there is no solid foundation. Without a clear routine, every decision requires mental effort, and when everything requires effort, the brain runs away. The earth teaches something simple and brutal. If it's not part of the routine, it doesn't exist. Don't rely on memory, motivation, or inspiration. Create fixed schedules, create rules. Take decisions out of your mind. When the basics are solid, action flows without debate. The water ring is about adaptation. Water doesn't resist, doesn't break, doesn't cling to any form. Musashi saw rigidity as weakness. Many procrastinate because they overplan and become frustrated when the plan fails. Water doesn't get frustrated. It circumvents, it adjusts, it continues. Applied to modern life, this means stopping giving up when something doesn't turn out perfectly. Procrastinators often say, "I've already messed up today, I'll start tomorrow." Water doesn't think that way. It keeps flowing. It adjusts its course and continues. Adaptability eliminates the paralysis caused by mistakes. The ring of fire represents action under pressure. Fire is conflict, difficulty, friction. Musashi believed that true character emerges when things get tough. Most people procrastinate because they avoid discomfort. Fire teaches the opposite. It is in discomfort that strength is created. If you only act when it's easy, you're training weakness. Musashi sought the fire. He understood that the mind needs to be exposed to difficulty to learn to act despite it. Every task avoided strengthens procrastination. Every task faced weakens that habit. The ring of the wind is the study of others. Musashi observed different styles to understand patterns, weaknesses, and mistakes. The modern procrastinator isolates himself in his own head. He doesn't observe, doesn't learn, doesn't compare. He only ruminates. The wind teaches you to step outside your own bubble. Study who wins. Observe how effective people make decisions. Learn from others' mistakes. This reduces insecurity and accelerates action. Those who understand the game don't get stuck. Finally, the void ring, the highest level, the point where action happens without conscious effort. The procrastinator lives trapped in excessive thinking. The void is the opposite. It is total presence, movement without internal noise. But this state does not arise from nothing. It is built upon earth, water, fire, and wind. Musashi didn't separate these rings. They formed a single system. When you try to act without a foundation, without adaptation, without tolerance for fire, and without external vision, the mind collapses. Procrastination appears as a symptom. The 5 rings don't ask you to be perfect. They ask you to be structured. Structure always wins over emotion. Those who live by the system act even on bad days. Those who live by emotion only act when everything is conspiring in their favor. Musashi did not believe in isolated strength. He believed in ruthless method. Method always triumphs over wasted talent. There is a point where thought ceases to help and begins to hinder. Musashi called this point empty. It's not the absence of mind, it's the absence of noise. It's the state in which action happens without hesitation, without internal dialogue, without sabotage. Modern man rarely experiences this. He lives trapped in his own head. He analyzes every step. He questions every decision. He endlessly replays scenarios. The result is paralysis. Musashi knew that overthinking kills performance. In combat, there was no time for elaborate reasoning. The body needed to act based on training. The mind only observed. When the mind tries to control everything, the body freezes. This principle is visible today in elite athletes, musicians, surgeons, pilots. Everyone gets involved. Flow state. They're not thinking about what to do, they're doing it. The thinking comes later. Procrastination is the inability to enter that state. Because man does not trust his own preparedness. He wants guarantees. He wants security. He wants absolute control. Emptiness demands the opposite, confidence built through training. Musashi trained until the action became natural. He repeated movements until his body knew the way without needing conscious commands. This is the only way to eliminate hesitation. It's not about thinking better, it's train better. In the modern world, this applies directly. If you struggle to start projects, make decisions, or take a stand, it's not a lack of intelligence. It's a lack of repetition, a lack of exposure, a lack of deliberate practice. Emptiness also teaches detachment from the outcome. Those who overthink are always trying to control the result. This generates anxiety. The strategist enters the action focused only on the process. He executes the next correct move, nothing more. Musashi didn't enter duels imagining victory or defeat. He entered them present, attentive, adjusting in real time. This state eliminates fear because fear lives in the future. Emptiness lives in the now. The modern mind is saturated with the future. Goals, expectations, comparisons. All of this fuels procrastination. Emptiness cuts through this. It brings action to the present moment. But here's the part that few people accept. Emptiness is not comfortable at first. When you silence the noise, you're left alone. No distractions, no excuses. That's scary. That's why many prefer to overthink rather than act. Musashi overcame this discomfort. He knew that true freedom is born when you no longer need to convince yourself to act. You simply act. If you want to stop procrastinating, stop seeking motivation and start seeking presence. Take the next small action now. No dramatizing, no bargaining, no overthinking. The void is not a mystical state. It's a trainable skill. And the more you train it, the harder it becomes to revert to paralysis. Musashi lived in that state. That's why he moved when others froze. There is a bitter truth that few intelligent men accept. Intelligence, when it becomes identity, transforms into a prison. Musashi never confused mental capacity with worth. For him, the only real criterion was simple. He who acts, dominates. He who only understands, serves. The modern intelligent man often prides himself on his own mind. He understands complex concepts, consumes profound content, recognizes patterns. But, silently, he begins to use this intelligence as a shield. A shield against error, against exposure, against public failure. This is the point where intelligence ceases to be an advantage and becomes an anchor. When a man's identity is tied to being intelligent, making mistakes becomes an existential threat. Each failed attempt is not seen as a learning experience, but as proof of inadequacy. So he postpones, he plans more, he studies more, he waits longer. All to preserve the internal image of someone who, knows what he's doing. Musashi never allowed that. He wasn't protecting his own image. He was protecting his own effectiveness. Intelligent men tend to overvalue thinking and undervalue execution. They believe that deeply understanding something is equivalent to being close to success. But the world doesn't reward understanding. It rewards result. While the intelligent man refines theories, the disciplined man accumulates attempts. He makes mistakes. He adjusts. He makes mistakes again. He adjusts better. In time, he moves ahead, not because he is more brilliant, but because he is willing to appear incompetent temporarily. Musashi understood this early on. He wasn't seeking intellectual validation. He was seeking true mastery. That's why he wandered as a ronin. That's why he rejected formal schools. That's why he endured the discomfort of solitude. He preferred to be considered strange than to be limited by conventions. The modern intelligent man usually does the opposite. He seeks belonging, approval, recognition, and each of these things comes at a price: conformity, hesitation, fear of standing out. Another common mistake is the obsession with perfect context. The intelligent person wants all the variables mapped out, all the information gathered, all the guarantees in place. But life never offers that, and Musashi knew it. Those who wait for total clarity never begin. Those who begin create clarity in the process. Intelligent men also tend to over-explain. They justify inaction with sophisticated arguments. It's not the right time. The market isn't ideal. I don't have everything yet. Each explanation seems reasonable, but the accumulation of them builds up to a lifetime of almost. Musashi didn't explain, he decided. The final difference is stark. The intelligent man wants to be right. The strategist wants to win. Being right doesn't change the world. Winning requires risk. It requires exposure. It requires accepting the possibility of error. If you recognize yourself here, the conclusion is straightforward. As long as you use your intelligence as an emotional refuge, you will continue to lag behind men who are less brilliant but more committed to action. Musashi never asked if he was intellectually secure. He asked if he was ready to act. This is the final separation. After all that Musashi experienced, learned, and wrote, his philosophy converges on a simple rule, almost uncomfortable to accept. Imperfect action always wins over perfect inaction. Musashi didn't believe in perfection. He believed in process. He knew that excellence is born from constant friction with reality, not from distant contemplation. Procrastination feeds on the illusion that one day you will be ready, that there will be an ideal moment, that confidence will arrive before action. Musashi proved the opposite. Confidence is born after the action, never before. Every time you act, even poorly, even with flaws, something changes internally. You accumulate evidence that you are capable of moving forward despite discomfort. This evidence builds inner command. Inner command builds identity. Identity builds destiny. Musashi didn't seek emotional security. He accepted instability as a natural condition of life. He trained to navigate chaos, not to eliminate it. That's why he was always ready when others froze. Imperfect action also eliminates the fear of judgment. When you act repeatedly, the gaze of others loses power. External opinion ceases to define your decisions. You begin to respond only to your own standards. This is the true freedom that Musashi defended. Not the freedom to do whatever one wants, but the freedom to not being controlled by fear. Most people keep postponing fundamental decisions. Projects, difficult conversations, changes of direction. They wait to feel different before acting. But Musashi teaches us that feelings change after of the movement. You don't think about your path to a new life. You act your way towards her. The final rule is clear. Execute before you feel like it. Execute before you feel confident. Execute before you're sure. Adjust along the way. Learn from the impact. Grow through friction. Procrastination dies at the first step taken without the mind's permission. Musashi lived like that. That's why he left a legacy that has spanned centuries. Not because he thought better than others, but because he acted when others hesitated. If you apply just this rule, your life will already change radically. Now the question is no longer philosophical, it's practical, it's personal, it's immediate. You'll keep thinking, or are you going to start taking action? Musashi left the map. But the path only reveals itself to those who walk it. If you understood that action overcomes fear, if you noticed that discipline creates freedom, so don't stop here. Subscribe to the Katana Mental channel, activate the notification bell, comment below, action. Thinking publicly declare which side you are on, because in the end, as Musashi taught, today you overcome the you of yesterday. Tomorrow, defeat the inferior men. The battle was never external, and now you know that.